Justin Jefferson get worse last year? Now you can ask, okay, well, did Jamar Chase get better last year? Jamar Chase had his most explosive season since arriving in the NFL, which is saying something because the dude has explosive seasons every year. But last year with Jamar Chase's Triple Crown season, it doesn't surprise me that Jamar Chase comes in at number 1 on ESPN's top 10 wide receiver list. Now, ESPN's top 10 wide receiver list is made up of coaches, front office personnel, scouts, and executives. So, ESPN's putting it out, but it's through the surveys that they conducted with the league personnel. Is it a hill I'm willing to die on to fight you to the death to say Jamar Chase is not the best wide receiver in football? Look, Justin Jefferson has been the best receiver in football since he arrived in the league, and he didn't get worse last year. And I don't think that Jamar Chase is better than Justin Jefferson. Now, again, we're splitting hairs here because if Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are both free agents and you need a wide receiver and you're targeting Jamar Chase and you don't get Jamar Chase and you get stuck with Justin Jefferson, you're still sitting very pretty and vice versa. It's 1A and 1B. But 1A to me is Justin Jefferson because I still believe that there is a side of Jamar Chase that we've seen glimpses of, and it's not all rainbows and sunshine. And what I mean by that is one wide receiver puts up magnificent numbers no matter who's throwing him the football, and then the other receiver is very dependent on who is throwing him the football. Jamar Chase is very Joe Burrow dependent, and that's not an opinion. The numbers back that up. I'm doing my homework for old today's show. It's amazing what you come across. But Jamar Chase, how about this? 7 games without Joe Burrow. 7 games without Joe Burrow in his career. These are the numbers that we're talking about here, okay? So Jamar Chase, he has had 31 catches for 409 yards and has scored 1 touchdown in 7 games without Joe Burrow in his career. 7 games. That's 2 games short. That's 2 games short of just a hair past halfway point of the season. Imagine this upcoming season if Jamar Chase, 7 weeks into the season, only had 409 yards and 1 touchdown. We would say how horrible that is, correct? I think we can all agree. That's not number 1 wide receiver in the NFL stuff. But in 7 games without Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase has only 409 yards and 31 catches. That's 58 yards a game. Without Joe Burrow throwing him the football, without him without him having a top 5 quarterback throwing him the football, he's very average at best. The numbers, that is, the production. I know how talented Jamar Chase is. But 1 touchdown in 7 games without Joe Burrow throwing him the football. He disappears. He's non-existent. He has no impact. And I think that that's a problem. And I think that's a glaring issue as far as that's concerned. Jamar Chase, he loves bullying defensive backs when you got T. Higgins, another number 1 wide receiver, playing with you and having one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL throwing you the football. He's a bully. But when he doesn't have Joe Burrow throwing him the football, he's not an elite wide receiver statistically. And we can get into this too. We talked about yesterday how Joe Burrow constantly was harping on the fact that how much he needed T. Higgins. Joe Burrow's not the only one that needs T. Higgins. Jamar Chase's production without T. Higgins is pretty abysmal as well. Jamar Chase is one of the most dependent wide receivers in the National Football League. And when he has those he depends on, he is the most explosive wide receiver in football, as we saw last year. But you can get mad at me. You could say, Kenner, you're a Browns fan. Kenner, you're just hating. But the numbers don't lie. 7 games. If Jamar Chase, 7 games into this upcoming season, is averaging 58 yards a game and only has 1 touchdown in the first 7 games, you would say how horrendous of a start to the season that is. But that's who Jamar Chase is without Joe Burrow throwing him the football. That's not an opinion. That's not me twisting something. That's not me trying to, get clicks or whatever else you guys like to say. Oh, it's just rage bait. I don't know. Those numbers, to me, to say Jamar Chase is the number 1 wide receiver in football, I can't do that when those numbers exist. Justin Jefferson puts up those numbers no matter who's throwing him the football. I would love to see what Justin Jefferson could do if he had a chance to play with the Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, you know what I mean? A Justin Herbert, a Joe Burrow. I would love to see what that dude could do if he had an elite quarterback throwing him the football, and he hasn't had that. He had Sam Darnold throwing him the football. Now, before you guys get all excited and say, did you see how well Sam Darnold played football last year? I did. He played so well that the Vikings decided to just let him go. They just decided to let him go. They didn't even try to keep him. They said, thanks, but no thanks, Sam Darnold. Peace be with you. And off he went. I don't know about you, but I know his numbers looked good on paper. But if Sam Darnold was as good as what you guys are trying to portray him to be to back this up, teams don't just let elite quarterbacks go like that. Sam Darnold's not an elite quarterback. Kirk Cousins is not an elite quarterback. And those are the guys that he was playing with while Jamar Chase is having T. Higgins alongside him and having Joe Burrow throw him the football. Justin Jefferson's the best wide receiver in football. He's not dependent. He's not dependent on which wide receivers are playing alongside him. He's not dependent on who's throwing him the football. Justin Jefferson goes out there, gets the job done, and you know what you get. No matter who's throwing him the football, you know what you get. And I know who Jamar Chase is when Joe Burrow's out there. But that's the thing. I also know who Jamar Chase is when Joe Burrow's not out there. 58 yards a game, 1 touchdown in 7 games. And like that's the crazy part about all of this too, is when you look at some of these games, I mean, 4 catches in one game, 3 catches in the other, 4 catches, 3 catches, 4 catches, 2 catches. He's not even getting involved. He doesn't even have a thumbprint on these games when Joe Burrow's not throwing him the football. He's not the best wide receiver in football. He is, however, the most dependent wide receiver in football. But to his credit, when he has Joe Burrow throwing him the football, when he has T. Higgins playing alongside him, there's no stopping Jamar Chase. That I will not deny. I know this. I know that. But I also know Jamar Chase very dependent on Joe Burrow.